This meeting is being held in person at the district's administrative office and by teleconference pursuant to Government Code Section 54953. Members of the public can attend and participate in the meeting in person or via Zoom. Instructions for submitting public comments are available on the meeting agenda. Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Director Gleason?
Here.
Director Riffle?
Here.
Director Holman?
Here.
Thank you. May I please have a motion to adopt the agenda? So moved. Clerk, may we have the roll call, the agenda vote, please, or roll call vote for the agenda?
Director Gleason?
Yes.
Director Riffle?
Yes.
Director Holman?
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes 3-0.
Great, thank you. At this time, the clerk will call on members of the public individually who have submitted a public comment form. Commenters will be allowed to address the board for up to 3 minutes. Clerk, are there comments from the members of the public on matters within the jurisdiction of the district, but not on the agenda today?
No, we have no public commenters at this time.
Okay, thank you. All right, on to committee item number 1. We have the responsibility of selecting committee chair for the 2024 calendar year. So do we have a volunteer or nominations for 2024 Action Plan and Budget Committee Chair?
I'm looking to my right because both of you are to my right. What would be great is if one of you doesn't have other chair assignments this year, if you could take that on. I don't know. I don't remember who has what chair assignments.
I do have one.
You do have one?
Yeah. And I'm not sure if I'm one or not because the BAE hasn't met yet. So.
Okay. Then one of you volunteer.
Okay.
That's what's happened in the past too.
All right. Well, I'd be glad to volunteer. Okay.
Because I really don't want to take it on this year.
Okay.
So
Okay.
I
would be happy to volunteer.
So by consent, can we nominate and approve Director Riffle as chair of the Finance Committee of the?
In fact, yeah, let me take that over. First of all,
Okay,
do we have any public comment on this?
No, we have no public comments on this item.
So may I have a motion for Director Riffle to be Action Plan and Budget Committee Chair for 2024?
So move.
Second. Great. May we have a roll call vote, please?
Director Gleason?
Yes.
Director Riffle?
Yes.
Director Holman?
Yes.
Thank you. By a vote of 3-0, the committee elects Director Riffle as committee chair for the calendar year 2024.
Thank you. And thank you to my colleagues. Okay, committee item number 2. Approve the May 16th, 2023 Action Plan and Budget Committee meeting minutes. Clerk, do we have any public comments?
We do not have any public commenters on this item.
Okay, may I have a motion to approve the May 16th, 2023 minutes?
So I think this has been brought up before. That's a year ago. And I think what's really practical is if the minutes for a committee that serves for a period of time, if they could get the opportunity to approve the minutes in a more timely manner, because committee members can change and then memory from a year ago is just, it's really difficult. So if there's I guess I look to general managers, is there a means to do that?
This is General Counsel Stevenson. My understanding is that the ABC committee doesn't meet after the budget is adopted unless there's some other reason to meet. So there's no reason that a member of the current committee who wasn't sitting last season can't still vote to approve the minutes, because we want the objective is to make sure that the district has an official record. So I don't know if the general manager has any practical suggestions, but just from a standpoint of being able to vote, it's been our common practice and perfectly acceptable for the members for this season to approve the minutes for last season. Hopefully that helps.
And I guess the only thing else I would add, and I'll look over to general counsel as well, is that if there's a desire, if this desire specifically to be able to meet and adopt the approve the minutes, within reasonable time, if you will, from the last meeting, then I think the only way we can do that is to convene a meeting just for that purpose. But that would be the sole purpose. And so you'd have to think about whether that.
Yeah, I
that's something you
understand.
wanna do.
I'm sorry. I understand the ability to vote on things. It's memory. Memory from a year ago is not, all that great, especially with some of the details going into it. So perhaps one suggestion might be to just ahead of a regular board meeting, that the committee have a meeting just for the purposes of approving the minutes. And that way it's done in a timely manner, when memories are fresher and when all committee members will be available to vote. Just a suggestion.
So that would be something for you all to consider. If that's what you would like to do, is convene a meeting just for that purpose to approve the minutes. The other idea would be, and now I'm going to look at our clerk, is to provide you the minutes within a few weeks after the committee meeting. You can review them at that time, but hold on to the approval process until the next meeting. But you can make a note to indicate that the minutes are correct based on your more current memory back, from that time.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. This is Maria Soria, District Clerk. I just wanted to bring up that we do bring the minutes of the ABC to the board as draft when the board adopts the budget. So that does come to the board one time. So maybe at that time I could get any input to the minutes and then we can have them ready for approval once we start the ABC meetings the following year.
Director Gleason?
Yeah, just back to the previous suggestion. If the minutes are going to come forward in that meeting, maybe we could just have a 10-minute committee meeting before that to approve the minutes, and that would take care of the whole thing, right? I wouldn't actually want to schedule a separate committee meeting at a different time. I would prefer not to do that, but if everybody's going to be there anyway, and the minutes are going to figure in that meeting, maybe it just makes sense to approve them.
If that's the wish of the committee, we could do that and schedule it, 15 minutes before the either special meeting or board meeting, whichever comes first for that evening.
Okay, so this would be the meeting that the board would approve or consider the committee's recommendations.
Correct. And District Clerk, that would be the first hearing of the budget, correct?
Correct.
That's fine with me. Is that okay with you? Yeah. Okay. Are 3 nods okay? Okay. All right. And I thank you for bringing this up, and also thanks for staff for accommodating this approach. Okay. Let's see. Did we vote? We did not.
Not
We
yet.
didn't have any
I do
comments.
not have a motion yet for the approval of the minutes.
Okay. Okay.
So I'll move approval of minutes.
I'll second.
Okay. Maybe a roll call vote, please.
Director Gleason,
Yes.
Chair Riffle,
Yes.
Director Holman.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes 3-0.
Great. All right. On to committee item number 3, fiscal year 2024-2025 budget and 3-year capital improvement and action plan review. May we have our staff presentation on the proposed budget and capital improvement and action plan?
Good afternoon, Stefan Josh Clark, CFO. It's my pleasure to present to you the proposed budget and action plan for the fiscal year ending June 30, 2025, also known as FY25. I'll be doing that along with my colleagues, Assistant General Managers Brian Malone and Susanna Chan, and I'll also call for a little bit of reinforcements on some of the revenue numbers from our controller, Mike Foster. So the general manager's recommendation is pretty straightforward. It's to review and affirm, with any changes requested by the ABC committee, that the proposed FY25 budget, as well as the fiscal year 2024-25 through all the way through 27, capital improvement action plan may be forwarded to the full board of directors for consideration. So what we hope to do today is, looks like I'll be up here for 2 hours before I turn it over. So I apologize for that.
Gonna clear out the room for sure. So, yeah.
It's not very heavily populated, so that's not a very tall order right now. Everybody's in the peanut gallery over there. So we'll be going over the budget process and timeline. That shouldn't take too much. Board recaps real quick. Then we'll spend quite a bit of time in more detail for the FY25 budget. Some long-range financial plan, personnel growth. We'll spend some time on, as well as looking at department budgets. And then we'll start looking into the CIAP, the CIAP overview, which is broken up into 4 projects. We typically make it through 2 of the 4, well, programs, I should say, not projects. The projects are divided into 4 programs. We typically make it through the first 2 before time either runs out or, and then we go into May 21, which would be our second meeting for the other 2 programs, and then wrapping it up on that day, after which it'll go to the full board. So what does this look like on a calendar basis? As you know, in December, we have our first.
Stefan, sorry, before we get, can we go back to the process you're using? I'm just going to ask this question only because I'm wondering where we should have it, but I think we were assigned at some point during the March meeting, the big rocks list.
Right.
And I know it's in the report, but I think if I remember right, I think we had an assignment to take a look at that list and make sure that we were comfortable with it.
Right. And there is a slide in here regarding big rocks.
Okay.
And at that time, we can look at that, and
Okay.
we'll give you a little bit more background as to how it evolved compared to March to
Okay.
now.
Okay, great.
Sure.
Okay, thank you.
And of course, on any slide, if any of the committee members have questions, please let's do it on that slide. I think that's most efficient. So we had December board retreat 1, then we go to work, resource loading, etc., figuring out which projects. We came back to you in March, also where we discussed big rocks and basically did project prioritization. Then we go back and sharpen our pencils. We also discussed with the general manager to see if there are any other additions, changes, etc. And then we're here basically in May for ABC review and hopefully approval. After which next month in June, we will have 2 board meetings. The first one is the more in-depth, running through a little bit faster than what we're doing today, but going through this whole presentation. And then the second meeting in June is a little bit quicker for the adoption, second read basically. And then July 1st, we can go ahead and use it. So as far as board retreat, in December, on December 5th, we had our first meeting at which traditionally we consider results of the environmental scan and discuss them. That then leads into a review and an update, as well as adoption of the FY25 strategic plan. And those updates, this round basically related to climate resiliency, biodiversity, and environmental advocacy, as well as tribal engagement through DEI. And the third item was the FOSM priorities. As you know, in 2023, we did a lot of work on our FOSM refresh, and that was embedded into the strategic plan along with other workforce concerns. And then we rounded out that day with an update on Measure AA projects and spending progress to date, well, to date actually being June 30, FY23, because that provides us with a audited financial statement to compare apples to apples year over year. Then on March 6th, about 3 months later, we had our second board retreat. That was basically the project prioritization. where we looked at our proposed budget, which was very high level. I always like to do that in March just to make sure that what we're proposing to you fits within our means. So we also looked at high level anticipated revenues and expenditures. We looked at the CEOP in all 4 program areas. So that's land acquisition, natural resource protection, public access, as well as assets. The big rocks conversation happened, and we provided much more detail on the FOSM implementation schedule for staffing, but also for non-staffing recommendations. So this results in a proposed FY25 budget. So this is the really, the 50,000 foot level overview of what the budget and the revenues and expenses look like. We're looking basically at about 89.5 million revenues and expenses, and we'll have about 100,000 left over. The revenues, no surprise probably that the vast majority, 87% of it is property tax, 77.7 million, about 8.5 million in grant revenue, so that's receipts, reimbursements basically, or grants that we have inked. Rental income and other is about 2.5 million. We have 4.5 million, 4.6 million of interest income. And we'll go into that a little bit more detail on future slides as well. There's some general fund transfers, and then there's some bond debt premium that we're about to generate when we sell the 2024 tranche of measured AA bonds. So that rounds out the categories within the revenues and other funding sources at 89, almost 89.6 million. The expense side, salaries and benefits is about 42%. And then service and supplies, 15, MAA capital, about 8. General fund capital is 16, and then debt service is 19%, coming close to 89.5 million. So that gives you an idea of both sides of the coin. So let's first look at the revenues. It's about an 11% increase compared to FY24. The property taxes are increasing by about 8%, and a component of that is an increase in AV, but also because the levy itself will increase because we're issuing additional measured AA bonds. Grant revenue is increasing by 2.2 million. Part of that is also the reimbursements on the Bear Creek Phase 2 will happen in fiscal year 25. And then interest income is increasing. We're in a rising or a decent interest rate environment, but also there will be new bond proceeds sitting, waiting to be expended and gaining some interest income in the meantime. And then there's other funding sources, revenues, transfers, et cetera, including some internal fund transfers to pay for, of course, the general fund capital. Fund 40 will have some bond funding. A $5.1 million transfer to Committee for Infrastructure, and that's geared for Skyline Field Office and Coastal Field Office reserves. If we look at this in more detail, you see that the property tax revenues, the total of 77.7 million, is split in about 71 million general fund operating revenue and about 6.6 million for Fund 50 debt service, and that is the levy for the measured AA bonds. Grants, there's some in general fund, about 1.7 million. There's quite a bit in measured AA, almost 6.3, and some in general fund as well, 500,000. You see interest income at about 3.4 in general fund, and then there's the $1 million in measured AA, and that's basically because those bond proceeds will be sitting there for a minute. We'll have rental income, and we also split out the rental income for 50/50 for this building, the 4 suites we have here. So you see that regular rental income is 1.3 million. It's been pretty stable, I think, over the 8 years I've been here, it might have gone from 1.1 to 1.3, so that's pretty normal increase. Been around 1.2 for a long time. But for this building, it's estimated at 670,000, which is nice, especially if you include that by the fact that we don't have to lease office space on the other side of the Carl's Jr., which was about $500,000, so we're more than $1 million to the good as far as that goes in general fund. Then we have the Rancho agreement, and there's always the 100,000 miscellaneous. We typically exceed that. So that totals out to revenues for the general fund is a healthy 78.7 million. And then if you go all the way across, I mean, Hawthorne's is small, right? We have Measure AA funding, about 7.3 million. And then some general fund capital. And then there is, of course, the debt service. So total of 93.4 million in revenues. Now, we also have other funding sources, bond revenues, bond reimbursements come into play there, as well as the transfer out to committed reserves, and that's for the infrastructure that I just mentioned. You see in Fund 50, there's a $1.25 million bond debt service premium. So when we issue bonds, we typically also have a premium, and that premium can only be used to offset interest expense. So if any principal payment we do, that comes out of levy, but as long as we have some premium, that goes directly towards interest expense, so we can count that. And then the general fund transfer of 22.3 million is basically to fund the general fund capital expense of 13 million, as well as the non-Measure AA debt service of about 10 million. No, I mean, not 10 million, 8.8, sorry. Any questions?
Questions? So I actually have two. One is just more of a logistics. Would it be possible to get a copy of these slides at some point, Stefan? Yeah. Great, thanks.
Absolutely.
And by the way, I find these really helpful. The second is, as you look at this revenue portfolio, if you will, are there any risks here? Or is this pretty well nailed down? We should, or maybe let me just ask a question. Is there anything that here that might be considered soft?
I don't think so. I mean, grants could be soft if certain parts of the project slide, but that also means that expenses may slide.
Right.
Property tax revenues, Mike will go into that a little bit more detail, but he's pretty conservative about that. Plus our AV is just about bulletproof around here.
Yeah.
Rental income, I mean, there's agreements, right? There's multi-year contracts. Yes, somebody could drop out, but because there's such a wide variety, I mean, even in this building, we have 4 tenants. Chance of all 4 disappearing into thin air are slim.
Right.
If one does, we can easily absorb it. We have the flexibility. Of course, the number to always play with is how much we transfer over to the committed reserve.
Right.
That can absorb, as well as expenses. We tend to budget not overly excessive, but then again, there's always seems to be budget savings on the expense side.
Right.
So the way our budgets are structured, we're probably the envy of the rest of the country as far as that goes, because we have a lot of flexibility, If there's a real crunch, we can push out capital projects.
Right.
Especially the general fund capital projects, since they're hinged with the revenue on that side. Measure AA is bond reimbursed.
Right.
So that's not as important. Yeah.
Okay, good.
I've
Thank you.
been through a lot of different entities with budgets, and this is a pleasure to present.
Great, thanks.
This gives you an idea of the trends. Again, the blue is property tax. Grants, you can see a significant increase in FY23, but that's when we closed on Cloverdale. Right? We had nice, healthy grants in there. And then again, in 25, there will be A little bit healthier grants as well. The rest is pretty stable if you look at that. A little bit more detail on the grant revenue, the way it looks right now. I know it tapers down in FY 26 and 27, but that's just because we need to put more on the rolls and get going on that. And again, this is completely reimbursement based on grants that have been awarded and have been executed on. You see there a fair amount of wildland fire grant reimbursements. We have $1 million and then $350,000 from two different state entities. We're still working through the Valley Water IPM grant. And if you recall, that was $1 million for 5 years, and then they re-upped us for another $1 million for 5 years. That's very helpful. We have the Santa Cruz Kangaroo Rat, some more wildlife corridor, a lot of Highway 17 grants from various agencies. Next to the last, you see that's the phase 2 trail improvements in Bear Creek Redwoods that I mentioned, the $2.5 million reimbursement. There's some final paperwork that we're working through, and then we can submit that. So the construction is largely done. And then there's the Alma Bridge Nude Passage design. We're also anticipating $500,000 on reimbursements there. That's about $8.5 million for FY 25. Questions?
Just a peripheral question to this. How are we doing on recruiting our successor to Deborah?
We
That
had
applies to
the,
this slide a lot.
we had the second round of interviews yesterday,
Oh, great.
and we had 2 very capable candidates.
Great.
So it's a difficult decision that I need to dig in a little bit more as to,
Right.
Yeah, but the sun is shining.
Right. Great.
Yeah, absolutely.
Good. Thanks.
Then I will ask Mike to come up to give some color on the numbers behind the numbers on revenue.
It was interesting that this is Mike Foster, controller. It was interesting that they on that chart, it was the revenue was brown on this chart and blue on this chart. I don't know how we do that. That's pretty creative. But, yeah. Yeah. Okay. On our taxes, the first column, of course, is the actual from last year, and then the second column is the original budget for this year, and then the current forecast. At least the forecast that in April, when this was made anyway, and then the increase that's forecasted for next year. We exceeded the original budget, or we're going to exceed the original budget by up to $1.5 million, and that came from that the AV ended up being increased by more than we thought. When this original budget was set back in March or April. And then the redevelopment continues to be a mysteriously high source of revenue. Like the assets that are considered in that fund seem to appreciate faster than any other assets, and I'm not sure exactly why that is. But and then the supplemental taxes are ending up to be a little higher, slightly higher than was anticipated, although way down from the prior year. So from this indicates that about a 6.4% increase in the current year in the current secured in Santa Clara, and 5.4% increase in San Mateo. And then the tax subventions down about 27%, and the redevelopment up about 10%, for an overall about 4.9%. Now the AV, we get a little update from the assessors every month, and they seem to be running in the 4.5%. Actually, they're running a little more than 4.5% through April, but then I'm expecting there's going to be the adjustments at the end of the year when they put in the office buildings and stuff like that, that there's going to be some downward adjustment. So hopefully the 4.5% will end up being conservative, but I'm hoping it's going to be that high based on the kind of adjustments that could be made. And then there's really no way to predict the unsecured taxes. They fluctuate quite a bit. So I'm putting in 4% there. And then the SB, I'm assuming that the supplemental taxes are gonna rebound next year because the real estate activity seems to be picking up despite the high interest rates, at least in the quote unquote luxury. Virtually everything in the district from a national point of view goes in the luxury column. It's funny when they show pictures, of this luxury house, that's a $3 million house, and anybody in the country thinks they made a mistake, but anyway, so I'm expecting that's going to pick up, but we don't have any information. And then redevelopment got 4% there. So overall, 4.5% is what this 71.1 is based on. So any questions before I go on to the next slide? The next slide is simply a historical slide. Oh, I have to move it? Oh, do I go down or, okay, 50-50, okay. So over the last 10 years, the current secured in Santa Clara has doubled in terms of dollars and up about 8% a year. So that's kind of amazing, over a 10-year period, with the lowest being 5.3 in any 1 year. So the 4.5 that we're predicting for next year would be the lowest in a long time. And then in San Mateo, it's up 1.9 times in dollars. Oh, actually, this is only 9 years worth of increase. So it's 7.3% average, so just slightly lower. And again, the lowest was last year, or this current year at 5.4. And so again, 4.5 would be very low. So, and then the supplemental fluctuates wildly, as you notice. That's at least in dollars, it's up 50% from 9 years ago. And then for redevelopment, our star is up almost, in terms of dollars, it's up 3 times over 9 years. So maybe if we had more redevelopment properties, we'd do better. But because those are properties that entered that pool, when they eliminated the redevelopment act or whatever it was called, and those properties have been appreciating pretty well. So anyway, overall, an average of 7.4% over that period. So it's just historical, but the rating agencies always like this kind of information. So anyway, that's all that I was assigned to present. So any questions about our tax revenue? Okay.
Thank you, Mike. This is an overview of the entire budget, pretty much. I like to dub it my favorite slide. It gives you the revenues. We've gone over the revenues. We've gone over the other funding sources. On the expenses, operating expense about 47 million and almost 600,000 of labor reimbursements for Measure AA work. And then there's other projects in the general fund also for about 4.5 million. So our general fund expenses total out to about a little bit north of 51 million. So that means that, revenues minus expenses, we'd have about 75,000 growth in fund balance as far as that goes. Hawthorne's, that's small, that's, 64,000 in expenses. We'll draw down on the fund a little bit and have 118,000 of 64 revenues, a little bit of fund draw, and then 118,000 in expenses. 37 of which is operating, but 81,000 would be attributable to the project. Measure AA, it's a little bit different, bigger numbers. Again, we have the grants, but then on the expenditure side, we're projecting 7.3 million. General fund capital, we're expecting almost 14, a little bit north of 14 million. And then the debt service, you see it broken out on expenses on the general fund debt of about 8.9, almost 9 million. And then the debt service and measured AA goes up a little bit to 7.8 million. So that totals out our total expenses anticipated at 89.5 million. So let's dive a little deeper. As you know, I mean, operating expense about 57%, sorry. Capital about 24%, and then debt service is 19%. Now keep in mind though that the acquisition costs, so the actual purchase price is not budgeted at this time. We do that when we have an actual acquisition, we do a budget adjustment for that. And the reason for that is that because it's sometimes hard to predict how much will be expended on purchases. Some years it's more, some years it's less, or it slips a year. And by doing it this way, it's much easier to compare budgets year over year and be more steady as far as that goes. So that's worked well for us in the past. So if we look at it by fund, it is a total 8% increase compared to FY24. For Fund 30, the main driver is FOSM hiring, right? For Fund 30, we did have an acquisition budgeted last year, and that was the Eberhard property, because that was already signed and a known quantity and was going to close. So that's been completed. For Fund 40, there's a lot of infrastructure improvements coming up. The biggest one of that is the radio system. And then in Fund 50, the increase is basically attributable to the issuance of the Series 2024 for Measure AA. So you can see the budget adopted FY24 was 82.8 million. And we're going up to 89.5 million. So total increase of about 6.6, 6.7. Once we deduct the one-time expenses of Fund 40, and that was attributable to this building, the acquisition and construction, et cetera, is behind us. So that line item is zero for FY25. So going down another level, basically by expense, by category, there's a little bit different way of looking at it. You can see that salaries and benefits are almost 38 million. So there's an increase of 5 million. We have services and supplies. They're almost steady. They're only up by 650,000. Well, it's still 5%, but almost 14 million. Hawthorne's is right there. That's a huge 218% increase. But then again, that's only $81,000 increase. Now in the capital, you see there's a decrease in Measure AA. There's also an increase in general fund. A lot of that is the radios. And the one-time expenses are gone. So net total capital expenditures are up by 1.3 million. The land, you see the decrease from Measure AA, and again, that's Eberhard, so that's easy to explain. And then general fund is up a little bit. So total land acquisition, we're looking at close to 800,000. Then I guess I usually call it the walking around money. I mean, that's basically surveys or any kind of consultants that we may need to leading up to an acquisition itself, and then the purchase cost will be done through budget adjustment at the time of approval by the board. Debt service going up, as we mentioned, and that totals out to 89.5. There's a lot of different ways we can look at these numbers. Question?
Yeah, let's pause for a minute. Do you have any questions? No? Okay. I have a dumb question, but no, I shouldn't say it that way because I'm asked this by constituents but I'm not smart enough to know how to answer it, I think. They're saying, hey, Kurt, you guys are paying a lot on this debt stuff, and I thought you had all this money. So I patiently explained to them why we do it that way. And then they say, or ask, so that debt service, is that principal plus interest, or is that how much you guys are paying on interest every year? And I waffle. And I should know that, but
Yeah.
Can you help me?
Absolutely. That is principal plus interest.
Okay.
And a couple of slides down, I'll show you exactly how it breaks down.
Okay. Okay, good.
Yeah. And it's a good question.
Well, I should know that, but I'm glad that you clarified it for me. By the way, the other question I get asked a lot is, so how much taxes are we paying into you guys every year? And I'll let somebody do some numbers, but I'm thinking it's about a cup of coffee a week.
I don't drink coffee, so I got a problem now.
So at some point, I would love to get some, that's what my numbers say, but that's what I've been telling people, and they walk away happy, but for that matter. So,
A home brew or Starbucks?
oh, this is a Starbucks. Yeah, bring your own mug. All right.
I
Question?
can show you a few more details in a
Okay,
couple slides
great,
down.
thanks.
Yeah.
Question?
Yeah, is there an update on, because this is a question I get sometimes, not often anymore, but sometimes I get, what's the payback period on the purchase and refurbishment of this building?
Well,
'Cause I know we did a whole,
Mhm.
ROI at the time, but the rental, or how much we're renting out and stuff has changed, so has there been an updated schedule for that?
not necessarily an updated schedule, but each year right now, we are with rental income and saving the leases, we're more than $1 million to the good. Right? So that's one way of looking at it. So if you look at it that way, we're looking at, I don't know, 50 years, if we want to make the money back. Actually less than that, because we also sold the old building, so now we're down to 40 years if we're needing to make the money back. I don't know if well, ROI, there's other benefits to this building. There's different expense pictures with it. It's much more efficient than the old building was. We're all in the same building, so there's non-tangible benefits to that.
The question,
Financially, it's, I mean, that's not really our business model, if you will, right? But we are making our money back over time. We are saving money over time. This is if you look at it that way, this is a 50-year building at least, the way we're in it. We can earn it back in 40 years or less, maybe 30 or 25, as far as that goes. But there's a lot of assumptions in there. As we will start to expand into lease area now, we would lose those revenues, but then again, we don't have to lease that space, because under the old system, we would have to absorb more of that other building and our lease expenses would go up. So there's a lot of pieces missing in there, but I would say, 25 or so years, we're cost neutral.
that's helpful. Like I said,
There's market value too. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I couldn't hear that. What was that?
Like any real estate,
If this all was bought for 1.5 and sold for 10.3 over time,
Mhm.
So either way, this is a great asset that'll,
Mm. Yeah, it's, like I said, it's a question that doesn't get asked very often anymore, but I did get asked this again just
Right.
recently a couple times, and I was kind of like, well, I didn't have any updated schedule. I just knew that the rental situation had changed and,
Right.
and the intangibles they don't care about. They're caring about like the
Of
dollars
course.
and cents.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I mean, and one other thing you could point out is that the other building was done. It was worn out. It was ready to implode. I remember having meetings with the general manager back then his office, where somebody would be smoking on the other side of the wall, because that was the smoking area, and we could smell the cigarette smoke inside. I mean, that's how leaky the seals are. The AV, the heating never worked. There was one thing or another. Had we torn that down, which was one of the options, and rebuilt there, it would have been a lot more expensive.
And I do,
Aside from the disruption of moving and moving again.
and I do point that out, and I point out that this
Mhm.
was, you know, a redo of an existing building, which of course is environmentally preferable and,
Mhm.
you know, that sort of stuff. But
Yeah.
like I said, it doesn't come up very often, but once in a while, you know,
Sure.
somebody will kind of go, hey. So thank you very much.
Any other questions? I'm not sure if this is the right place to ask this question, but when we do our budgeting for our headcount, we're never at 100%. Do we budget for 100% for the entire year?
We do,
Okay.
we do.
Except for new positions though, right? New positions,
Well, right. So, yeah, that's true, except for new positions. New positions, we used to budget them at a quarter increment, depending, we talk to the department
right.
managers, okay, which quarter do you think we're gonna?
Right.
Now we just say, okay, we'll just do 6 months because it all averages out. If you're there for 3 quarters or 1 quarter or
Right.
half a year, it's all 6 months.
Right.
So we budget those the first year at 6 months, and then beyond that, of course, at full. And conservative as we are, we budget them at top step just to make sure that we're not going to run afoul on anything. The nice thing is at this point, for the last six years, I believe, we have calculated salary savings each June and come to the board and ask for permission to transfer that over into our pension 115 trust to ensure that our total pension liability is 90 something plus % funded. And plus that 115 trust also gives us flexibility if we need to tap into that to make our employer contribution, not the employee contribution, because that comes out of paycheck, but at least from the employer side, we could use that to offset some of the expense if we needed to. So that's a very nice savings account on that side. So, this is yet another way of looking at our expenses. This is a little bit more normalized. If you see the projected budget by fund, general fund, Hawthorne's, Measure AA, and Fund 40 capital, you can see that and that basically what that does is it took out the debt service because that is either steady or in this case, it increased because of a new issuance. And it takes out the one-time expenses. So if you do it that way, our budget went up by 7% from 68.1 to 72.7 million. Okay. Here you can see the trend. Colors are slightly more dynamic on screens rather than on the big screen. But you can see how the trend is, you know, the purple there in FY 21 and 22, that's this building. Yeah, FY 23, you can see it a little bit bigger on Measure AA capital. That was Hawthorne's.
Cloverdale.
Cloverdale, yeah, right. Sorry. I don't get out much. This is a trend of Measure AA expenditures. You can see it does fluctuate from year over year. Some of it has to do with the grants receipts. It has to do with the timing of that. It also has to do with acquisitions, the timing of that. And then some years we're just in more of a design mode versus a construction mode as well. So there could be some differences in that as well. But as you noticed in December at the retreat, including grants, were actually more than a third expended in the first 10 years. About what, 110 or so million, 90 million of or 85 to 90 million of bond funds, but augmented severely with grant funds. So, and also project-wise, we're tracking.
This is an important slide. If we could pause for a minute. Any question?
Yeah, do you have a non-land version of this chart?
I don't, but we can make one, and we can have a separate line that'll show that non-land part.
Actually, can I build on top of that? It's because I had actually the same. I was wondering if we could get a version of this, but breaks out by expense, of what type of expense, if you will.
Between land and non-land.
Just because I think not only I think where maybe where Director Gleason's coming from, not only how much are we spending on Measure A per year, but how are we spending it, you know,
Right.
basically on what type of expenses I think
Sure.
would be important.
Yeah.
So
If we can, especially if we can limit it to two categories, right? Land and non-land.
but can we get any more granular? So for example, we get a question about, you guys aren't building enough trails, you know, that Measure A, and I struggle a little bit to say just how much we're
Right,
doing other than miles.
Yeah, we can do it by the well, I was about to say 4 programs, but of course only 3 of the CUP programs apply to Measure AA, which is land acquisition, natural resource protection, and public access.
Right.
Right.
Well, I
mean,
think that'd help. Yeah.
Sure, we can do that.
As he looks to the back of the room.
And Stefan, this is Anna Ruiz, General Manager. As part of that information, when we bring that back to the board or the committee, can you also look back at what the assumptions, expectations were for the funding of Measure AA? Because I recall at least half was meant to go to the land, given the expense of land. But we can go back and look at what those assumptions were. We've got some paperwork. We have to, I know we have to dig a little bit, but yeah.
We have to dig a lot because that is not broken down over the timeline. That is
No,
that
not
is
by
the total.
year.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
no, right. It wouldn't be by year. It would be
Okay.
in terms of general assumptions of the use of the funds.
Mhm.
Ion, things like that.
Yeah. We'll see what we can cook up. How about that? But definitely the 3 CUP programs, that we can break that out over a colorful stack bar graph. Yeah. That helps. Sure. Okay. Debt service. So our total debt service is projected at 16.7 million. About 8.9 of that is general fund. And you can see there it's broken out by principal and interest. So about 5.7 is the principal, and about 3.1, 3.2 is the interest component. And you might wonder why the top line, the 2012s, are still up there. We've refunded them, and they're all zeros. But in 2030, they're coming back. There was a component for several years that we could not refund. That was just written in there. And I asked somebody that was involved in it, not Mike, but somebody from the outside, like, what were you guys thinking about not making that refundable? Because we could have saved a lot of money. They didn't really have a good answer, but here we are. I mean, it is what it is. Probably, but well, that's the structure, right? Yeah. So they'll be back next year. You'll start seeing the numbers coming back in. Our debt service for general fund is fairly stable at about 8.99 million in the future, and then it starts to taper off a little bit, but still in the $8 million range. Measure AA, we have the 2015s, the 2018s, and then soon the 2024s. That total debt service is about 7.8 million. And that's also broken out in principal and interest. 3.4 million principal and 4.4, 4.5 in interest. Principal and interest. So that gives us a total debt service. Now, I always like to look at this graph. It gives you, this is the general fund graph on the debt service. So you can see it's very stable over the years, and then at about the mid-2030s, it starts to taper off, and by 2039, there's only a small sliver left to pay off. If and when we do have opportunities to refund, some of that tapering will be a little bit quicker probably with some savings, or we'll shorten it up even more. Because I remember 8 years ago when I started that exercise, I think we went all the way into 2042. So we've shortened that up, which then frees up funding for the general fund, basically.
Mhm.
And then this is the Measure AA projected debt service. You can see that's a stable debt service. Now, it's interesting because, so this is levy driven. This was the one that has the max of $3.18 per 100,000. Right now, last year approved was $1.30, so it's well below the 318. But that's down from like $1.80 when we first issued the 2018. So you can see 2018 was $1.80, then it tapered down because the assessed value kept on growing, even though our cash needs were the same, so it tapers down. Now it's going to jump back up to about a $2 range, but then as AV keeps growing, it will start tapering down again. So there's some of that action going on in there. Any questions on debt service? No? Then we, separate from Mike's 30-year plan, we also looked at a little bit of long-range financial plan on our side. So on the revenues, we use Mike's assumptions. And then on the expenditure side, we use our own numbers. I know Mike uses haircuts, which is more in line with the reality, the way it typically plays out year over year. But this is more of a stress test, if you will, because we're taking the worst case scenario on the expenditures. And then we're also increasing the FTEs based on an assumption here. And if we do that, you can see each year, the bottom line, the fund balance line, we're positive. So that means that we have a very healthy trajectory on revenues based on Mike's projections, and then a little bit more aggressive on the expenditures, and we're still balanced budget basically, which is important. And I'm hoping that also serves to give a comfort level as to where the budget is right now. Question?
No. So another borderline dumb question, but something that I get sometimes is, so we're basically good, a long-range projection for not only running this place, but for completing our Measure AA commitments, and for the most part, and I'm looking at Alan back there, for the most part of being able to handle the land acquisitions that we think are going to come our way. You know, I'm thinking the long way down the road. So I can answer that. Yep, we're in pretty good shape as far as coverage. Is that a good answer?
Very good answer. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Great. Thanks.
Okay. If we look at fund balance, it increases. You can see, especially the general fund, of course, FY23 is 85. FY24 projected is 99 million, and then FY25 we're looking at 104. In total, if you include Measure AA and the debt service, it'll increase in FY25 to about 160 million. Of course, there's different types of reserves. I think the general fund are the most flexible. Measure AA is, of course, restricted to Measure AA. Same thing with Hawthorns, basically. It's restricted to Hawthorns. And the debt service, those amounts are basically the levy and what is left over in the levy after we pay. Because it's not always accurate, right? I mean, you project to collect a certain amount of money because you have the expenses, but there's a little bit of a cushion in there, so that's shown in the Fund 50 debt service as well. This provides a little bit more detail. You see the non-spendable. That's basically reserves or fund balance we cannot spend. It's committed. It needs to be paid out. We have restricted, again, Hawthorne, and you also see the pension, the Parts 115 trust that we have. The various committed fund balances, capital maintenance and repairs, projected at about 11.5 million, 4 million in equipment replacement, 18.7 for future acquisitions, and then infrastructure projected to increase to almost 32 million, and that's for SFO and the coastal office. And then the promissory note that was back for the Hunt note that will drop off next year as we don't have that column anymore. And then unassigned, the minimum is supposed to be the 30% of general fund revenues. If you recall a year ago, we updated that because it used to be 30% of general fund tax revenues, but because both interest income and rental income are a larger portion of general fund revenues, we've increased that to include total revenues. Okay. Questions? No? And then we'll move into personnel. The total expense of that is estimated at 37.9.
Hold on. I think we have a question.
Okay.
Sorry, and apologies if I missed the right time to plug this in, but I have a question on page 29 in our binder.
Section 2.
Section 2, yes. And it's on the fiscal year 25 climate action plan implementation actions. And it's not a big question, but I do have a question.
Page 29.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's under vehicles, and it says purchase carbon offsets for business flights. And that's the third row, if you will, down. And you find that? Stefan?
Yes.
Okay. So my question is, and again, it's not a big deal, but I do wonder, it's like, we're an open space district, and it's like, of all the things that we do, for nature and all this sort of stuff, it's like, it's kind of surprising to me that we're having to purchase carbon offsets. Is there not something else? I'm not a big fan of carbon offsets. Like, isn't there something we can do, especially on our own land, since we have all these thousands of acres? Isn't there something we could do rather than buying carbon offsets?
I see the AGM in that area coming up. I mean, of course, we have a lot of carbon offsets with trees growing, but maybe Brian has a good answer.
Brian Malone, Assistant General Manager, and we can have staff if we want to get into more detail. But basically, if we utilized all the carbon storage that's happening in our lands, we could walk away and say we're good. So the way our measuring is set up is that we're just looking at the emissions that we create, and we have programs to bring those emissions down. Have been really successful so far. Flights, there's no way to do that. So the only way, if we are going to document that we're reducing our emissions every year and making our goals, the only way to do that is either to stop flights for travel and training and that sort of thing, or to pay for credits for those flights. So it is, I understand the uncomfortableness with it because it's it's cheating in a sense, right? You're paying to offset elsewhere. But it's not our lands. We're already looking at increasing carbon storage, and we don't use any of that to offset emissions that we're creating in the course of our work. So we're definitely way on the plus side as far as that's concerned, as far as what our lands do overall and what our management of lands do. But we are actively trying to reduce the emissions that we put out as well.
I appreciate that response a lot and also appreciate that you understand why, there's not great comfort with like purchasing carbon offsets. So maybe some creative heads, including yours, can kind of think of some way that we could, because it's an accounting thing. Yes. More or less.
Correct. So that's so that does go towards reducing emissions overall outside the district, right? And so that's the accounting part of it. There's no other way to offset that we have control over for flights. But I hear what you're saying, and that is part of the overall program at this time. So we can look at it, but I don't, that would have an impact on our ability to meet our goals.
Which we certainly do want to do. So perhaps some other organization such as ours might have come up with something creative. Don't spend a lot of time on it, but it would be nice if we could say that we didn't have to purchase any carbon offsets.
All right.
All right. Thank you so much.
Okay, good question. Other comments or questions at this point? Just since we're now kind of looking in the binder, just a quick question on section 2, page 24. As I was looking down at the bottom, it says 2023 winter storm damage. It starts and it says in late 2023. Actually, it was early 2023, right? Wasn't it? Page 24. See where I'm at?
Yes. It was early in the calendar year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Second half of the fiscal year, but
Okay.
yeah.
All right. I was just kind of caught my eye. Wait, I don't remember major storms in late 2023. We had some, but okay. Just okay.
We'll make a note of that.
Anything else from the committee, since we're not really tracking to the binder? Good.
As Chair Riffle just indicated, we're not tracking necessarily to the binder, but it's really helpful that you've added in, I think maybe last year, you've added in the tracking by noting on the slide itself what page you're referring to. It's hugely helpful.
Right.
Thank you.
I'm glad to hear it.
Yeah, and to continue on the kudos theme, I really like on page 25, the FEMA grant summary. So thanks for putting that in. It's just, and also the funding terms, I guess it's on page 34, because that goes to the previous slide, because I keep trying to remember what assigned and restricted and what all that means. So thank you for putting that in.
Sure, yeah. And we'll be reviewing those policies a little bit more at the next ABC meeting as well.
Good. Good. All right. And always like to see the 5-year long-range financial planning. So thanks for including that.
Great.
Okay, unless there's any other comments, we can keep going, I guess.
All right. We'll dive into personnel. So that's estimated at 37.9 million. There's increases in all departments, basically, right? Because there's a certain assumption for base wage adjustment and step increase, and those are applied where applicable. There's increases in pension that go along with that. And then there's always increases in medical. So that accounts for all the increases in all the departments. Now, also, we have an annualization of FTEs that were added for FY24. And a year ago, you approved 3 additional FTE as part of the regular budget. And so there were 2 in administrative services. We were splitting the senior grants and procurement technician into 1 each, and also senior technologists for IT. We have more IT needs, more devices, Internet of Things, if you will, as well as 1 ranger overfill in visitor services. So that was the regular 3 in the adopted FY24 budget. Then in January, the first meeting in January, the board approved the addition of 14 FTEs as based on the FOSM refresh recommendations. So that's a total of 17. So those will be annualized in FY25, right? They were partial for FY24. They'll be full in FY25. In addition to that, we're proposing 9 new regular FTEs for FY25 based again on the FOSM recommendation. But those will be in the budget at half cost, because some will come in early in the fiscal year, some mid, some later. So they'll be staggered. And there's also 2 new limited term FTEs in there. And we added an intern to round out the intern program even more. We added that to the existing roster of 10. So that's also a very good thing. The way it breaks down then is based on this slide. You can see salaries, you can see the increases. So the total salaries for FY25 will be 28 and a half. OPEB, we held steady on 570. Benefits, they'll increase because of course pension increases, medical always increases, and then there's also some increases in other. So there's total increase of about 1.5 million in benefits. Workers' comp is relatively flat, and then director's fees are a slight uptick as well. So all in all, the grand total FY24 adopted was 32.8, and will go up to 37.8, 37.9. This graph shows you the catch-up, if you will, based on the FOSM recommendation. It's 32 FTEs. If you remember, there's 28 of them that are specifically called out, and then there was one recommendation that said implement coastal management plan, and that basically called for 4 FTEs. So that's a total of 32. We had 14 FY24 added. Several of them are either in interviews or have already been hired. Looking at adding 9 for FY25, then 7 for 26, and then 2 stragglers for FY27. So that's our total to come out to 32, and you can see they're heavily skewed towards the visitor and field services business line. Okay. So then we can look at departments, if you will. See how that breaks out. Again, I mean, the total is, let's just look at the normalized mid-pen budget, which is the 72.7 million, excluding debt service, because that adds to the whole organization. So it's broken out by departments. Well, administrative services is a lot of departments. Actually, it's a whole business line, and then the other ones are broken out by department. You can see the increases and decreases. Admin services, for example, up by 1.6, 1.7. Engineering by 2 million. But then again, land and facilities is going down a little bit. You can also see real properties going down by 2.8, but that's because we had Eberhard in there last year, for example. So that's kind of how it slices by department in a very high level overview. But I have slides for each individual department to give you a little bit more background on that. So on the admin services side, you can see most of the increases are in the salaries and benefits side of it. Net, that's the only increase. And that's because we're adding FTEs in FY24 and 25 to support the organization and the growth and implementation of FOSM. Our general fund capital is decreasing because a couple of large IST projects are completed. So that basically nets the entire increase out to our salaries increase. On E&C, engineering construction, they're increasing by 2 FTEs in FY24, and then half in FY25. And half, it sounds odd perhaps, but there's one intern and interns are counted as half because they're not full-time for a full year. Measure AA is decreasing because Bear Creek Phase 2 is largely completed. But then general fund is increasing because of ADA barrier removal and some more structures disposition. And you can see the breakdown in salaries and benefits and in reimbursable and service and supplies. So the total of operating goes up by about 300,000, but the capital, mainly general fund because of the ADA barrier removal and the structure disposition, the capital goes up a net of 1.3 million. General counsel, salaries and benefits are up a little bit because there's also an additional temporary special counsel services that we currently have. Other than that, it's pretty stable. General manager, there's a decrease, a net decrease, slight increase in salaries and benefits, but also a decrease in service and supplies, and some of that also has to do with the fact that we've completed the FOSM refresh contract. Yeah, appreciate that. We'll need to adjust the text instead of in, it's decreasing, right? So, but we will also have more expenses in tribal outreach, and of course, there'll be some expenses in FOSM implementation, right? Land and facilities increasing 6 FTEs mid-year and 1 new in FY25. So you'll see increase in salaries, benefits, supplies that go along with it. The total operating goes up by 1.2, but then capital goes down by 1.6. So net decrease of a little bit north of 400,000. Total budget of about 18.5 million. See the general fund capital about 2.1, 2.2 million, and then measured AA capital of $1 million. Natural resources, they're increasing by 2 temporary FTEs that were added mid-year and then 1 for FY25. General fund capital is increasing because of the Alma Bridge Newt wildlife passage, but for the newts. And then measured AA capital is decreasing because some projects are wrapping up right now, like La Honda, Total Pond. Total proposed budget is actually remarkably level at about 7.6 million. Planning, 2 new FTEs, and then 1 more coming up. Those are planner 3s, all 3 positions. Hawthorns continue to include a pursuit of a partnership. And then general fund is increasing because we're going to put more effort into Skyline Field Office renovation, which is progressing more quickly than anticipated. So total increase in their budget of about 750,000. Public affairs is slightly increasing, largely because of increased consulting services for legislative efforts that we got coming up and some outreach partnerships and sponsors. So total budget there is almost 2 million, increase of about 250. Real property, again, I mean, the decrease we know. There is an increase of 1 limited term FTE that was added in FY24. Other than that, there's not a whole lot of change, to be honest. And then lastly, the last department is visitor services. There is a $3 million increase. There's some new FTEs in 24 and 25, 2 each year. But then general fund is increasing because of the radio system. That's more than $2 million by itself, 2.1 million, as you can see. And that rounds out the departments.
Any pause for questions?
Sure.
I have a point where I want to go back to something, but I'm not sure where you are in your presentation. It might be best to do it at the end since
Yeah, my next part is to give you a high-level overview of the CIAP, the Capital Improvement Action Plan, after which I'll turn it over to the AGMs to start going into programs.
Okay, maybe I'll just hold my question until you're done with your presentation.
Okay.
Because it's going to ask you to go back.
No, either way is fine.
Fire away. Go ahead. Yep. Oh, okay. So on Director Riffle's theme of difficult questions that constituents ask, I wanted to ask about the fund balances. And one thing that comes up is people will observe that, we're socking away a lot of money. And what are we going to do with it? And sometimes, those questions will come at the same time as, oh, there's this particular place that I'd like access to. When are you going to open that up? And if people know those two things, that, well, you get a lot of money that you're not spending, but you also have these, these projects that aren't happening. It's kind of a tricky position, a difficult thing to answer.
Right. So opening or not opening areas of preserves not fast enough is more of an operational expense side. You have to have the planning, you have to have permits, you have to have all of that lined up before you can do that. And that takes time, sometimes more time than we like, of course. Whereas reserves are one-time funds. Right? So all of these efforts, you fund the personnel out of annual operating budgets, if you will, not out of one-time reserve funds. Additionally, you need reserves to be resilient. You need a certain level of reserves to be resilient, to be flexible, to be able to absorb the rainy day, the downturns, or anything else that might come at us. And we do use reserves. I mean, look at this building. We built up reserves, and then we use it to buy the building and to refurbish it and then to move into it. So we do things like that through reserves as well. Same thing with upcoming Skyline renovation and the coastal area office. We do those out of reserves. We did SAO out of reserves as well, because those are one-time investments. Last thing you want to do is use reserves for ongoing annual expenditures, because then you're basically, spending your savings account, because that's really what the reserves are. We have reserves for equipment replacement. If there's a massive something happens at Skyline and everything is wiped out and we need to buy all new equipment, we have a reserve for that. We have reserves for long-term capital maintenance, like if we have to redo Mount Amanum Road. We have to repave all that, and that's going to happen one of these days. That's expensive too. Does that help answer the question?
Yeah, I think all that is valid, but I think also the reserves are increasing because our revenue is above what we can spend, right? So I think there is a component of it that's, that you could work the numbers differently, and you could actually make the organization bigger to reflect that, right? And
well, you could. Now, what we're doing with this growth in reserves right now is setting it aside for staff facilities. Fund those rather than not fund them, not do them. There's different things, different ways to look at that, right? Do you want to increase staffing more rapidly? We have the FOSM refresh. There's a certain trajectory that was penciled out that is sustainable for the organization. We have to be able to hire people. We have to be able to onboard them, set up the projects for them, absorb all of that. And that doesn't happen overnight either. You want to do that in a measured and sustained method Because if you don't onboard people right, they'll be leaving pretty quick, and then you're recruiting again, and you get nothing, no projects accomplished. So that's why we're doing that in a deliberate speed, so we can absorb it. There's a lot of nuances with that. It's for lack of a better word, you don't just pick up the phone and there's 10 new planners that are running at full speed, or anywhere in any department.
Okay, thanks. Okay. Okay, good questions. I think we're good to go. Are we ready to go into kind of the next phase then?
The capital improvement action plan.
Okay, do we need to take a break? Are we going to keep going? How are we doing? Good. Okay. All right.
Break, no break?
No break.
No break. All right, we'll keep going. So there are a few changes since retreat number 2 back in March. The science symposium, the science advisory panel has been deferred. The start date of the Fremont Older Residence roof replacement is moved up to FY25. And replace the roof on the Coal Creek barn has been changed to FY26, so they traded places. And then there is the San Antonio multimodal access implementation. So the way it breaks down, as you know, we have 4 CEOP program areas, and they align with the 4 goals in the strategic plan, the goals and objectives. 11 projects are in the land acquisition area. Right now, that's only 2% of the cost because, again, the actual acquisition cost will be done when approved by the board. The natural resources is 38% at 9.8 million with 39 projects. Public access breaks down to 7.4 million, also with 39 projects at 28%. And then assets and organization is at 8.1 million with 31% or 30 projects. So it's kind of the rough breakout of those 4 projects and the focus areas. Then we also have the areas of interest. Agriculture, 14 projects for $1 million. Diversity is 18 projects that count towards that at 3.8 million, 15% of the total. And then fire resilience is 3.7 million with 12 projects. So those are the 3 areas of interest. And this is kind of how the project count fluctuates year over year for the 3 areas of interest, with FY20 being on the left and then migrating through time to FY25. You can see fire resilience increasing year over year, and the other 2 are fluctuating.
Those budgeted or actual?
Those are projects. Yeah. Right. Numbers of projects.
That's right.
Sometimes, yeah.
Question before you go on.
Sure.
Just to follow on the good question that Director Gleason asked about Measure A dollars.
Mhm.
Is there a way also to get an idea of number of projects that are Measure AA?
Do we have that? We should. Let me see.
Again, the objective is just to be able to answer that question.
Right,
So
right,
what
right.
are you doing?
Yeah, no, of course. Yeah, it's in the various program areas. Let me see real quick.
I'm just
Uh-huh.
wondering is maybe a slide or some kind of a breakout,
Yeah,
Stefan, of just addressing that Measure AA. So what do you,
right. Right.
give me a summary slide, if you will, of
Sure.
what are you doing on Measure AA?
We
'Cause I think
can,
it's all in there. We just haven't pulled it all into one.
right. We'll put that in,
Comment?
Yeah, related question is, on the slide that's currently on the screen. I'm kind of surprised to see a diversity is as high as it is. And so I'm just wondering if there's like examples of the kinds of projects would be included in these categories. Again, I'm just kind of surprised that the
Yeah.
diversity categories are running so high. Certainly something important to do, but how do we understand and interpret?
Yeah. Well, there's a fair number of projects included in that are public access related, as well as some that are access and organization related. So it hits multiple programs,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh,
I
is
think
it?
you, there's a,
And there's general fund projects, there's Measure AA projects, vision plan
Got it.
projects. And the same thing for wildland fire and agriculture. You can see those breakouts as well.
which page?
Got it. It's
Page,
section 3, page 6.
yeah, page 5, 6, and 7 for the three
Yeah.
programs.
Thank you for that.
All right.
We good?
And this is the slide I promised, Director Riffle, as far as big rocks. The total resource allocation for these projects is 31%.
Is that dollars or? what did we say?
Resource allocation, so manpower, ability to execute.
Okay.
Yeah. So that gives us plenty of cushion to absorb if we have shortages anywhere in vacancies, if you will, that we can continue executing on these projects, these big rocks. They're grouped in 5 different groups. You got climate resiliency and biodiversity. There's 4 of them right there, including the wildlife crossings, both for the newts and the larger animals for Highway 17. But then there's also the wildland fire and watershed, Los Gatos Creek watershed phase 2. Under Prisma Creek Redwoods, there's 4 projects. They're all dealing with that access, parking, trail, crossing, vehicle access, etc. General public access and trails. Again, there's the other Highway 17 crossing. We have Bear Creek Stables in there. BCR Phase 2, La Honda, parking trailhead access, Phase 1 and Phase 2. Another big rock is the implementing basically the FOSM refresh. So there's the update itself, as well as the non-recruitment projects, executing on those, as well as recruitments. And then the 5th category is the infrastructure improvements, of course, agricultural fencing, Lone Madrone corrals, coastal field office, that's the acquisition of a piece of property, but then also looking at the build out as well as Skyline field office renovation. So those are the big rocks that we would continue to push forward if there are drops in manpower and resources.
And just to add a little bit more, and Stefan, you covered it, but I'm going to just repeat it. Again, the big rocks were identified as all the projects we have on our work plan are important and they're going to all move forward. But these in particular are going to move forward even if we have issues with like project leads, say there's a vacancy. All of a sudden the project lead for, I'll just pick randomly, the Alma Road New Crossing project leaves. I noticed. Then we're gonna figure out how to fill that capacity requirement, move projects around so that particular project doesn't sit until that vacancy gets filled. Otherwise, that project keeps moving.
Right.
Other things might get impacted, but not these projects. These projects are going to keep moving forward at the pace that we need them to move forward according to the work plan and the schedule that we set up. But that, again, that's to say all projects are expected to move forward. It's just when there are issues, when there's a leave, when there's a vacancy, when something else occurs, these we're going to protect and keep these moving forward. And the reasons why these were identified as the big rocks is that they may be in the very critical phase of the project, and there's a lot of momentum that has built up already, and we want to make sure that that stays, or we have a critical partnership or a grant deadline that is associated with that project, or we have very high expectations from the public that we're going to get these things done, or they are really critical for our operations so that we can meet other priorities and goals that we have set up for ourselves in the fiscal years that are coming. So that's how these were identified. And we did refine the list. And I worked with the department managers to do that.
Actually, that was going to be my question, because one of our homework assignments was to say, what did we do with this list?
Yeah.
And I'm not sure I see much refinement. This is still a
We
pretty long list.
did, and I'm gonna need a reminder. What did we drop? Do you remember, Rafaela, how the numbers? We were in the 66% capacity range, and now we're down to 31, which provides a lot more flexibility in
right.
terms of our resources and how we move things around. And the number dropped pretty significantly too.
But cut in half?
But it's 20,
Projects, right?
Yeah.
it's from 30, I think we had 32 and it's now down to 21, if I just count the blocks.
That sounds about right. Does that sound right?
Okay, I like that. The only thing that I would add, so thank you for that, because I was going to ask the question, so what? Nice to have a list, but what does that mean? How that's going to be different? It probably would be good then for us to have some kind of a report back, at least an annual. So how did we do, or how are we doing? Or now look at my colleagues to say, is maybe even quarterly sounds a little bit too granular, but at some point during the year, I guess I'll kind of look to you on us to say, how are we doing on these things? Any adjustments, any issues, otherwise, because to us, to me at least, we should show good progress on these 21. That's how I'm interpreting it anyhow.
Right. And I think maybe, Stefan, the December retreat might be a good time to think about that.
Yeah, either December or maybe March. We'll have a little bit more of the year behind us. Plus then we can gauge what the spring is going to look like. One of those two.
Because these are all multi-year projects, so.
They are. So, and then we're talking about the scope of work for this fiscal year, right? We're not completing the entire project because they are multi-year projects. It's the scope that we have set aside for this year.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Karen?
Yeah, I appreciate the question because I was thinking something similar about something else. But if it could be done in December at the retreat, it seems like that's a better check-in than just because March is really just almost just prior to our doing this exercise.
Right.
So if it's possible
Sure.
to do it in December, that would be terrific.
I agree.
Okay, we'll make note of that.
And far be it from me to point out a typo, but there is one. It's a coastal field office build out as opposed to coastal. It's just a typo.
Good catch. Yeah. Okay.
Great. Any other comments on this? This looks like a very robust list, so. Yep. Good idea. Okay.
Then at this point, it's my pleasure to turn it over to the AGMs for the programs.
Stefan, before we go and letting Susanna get kind of set up there, I just appreciated, by the way, kind of the breakout of the departmental versions of this and kind of, goals and especially the metrics. And I was just wondering, do we actually use those metrics? Are department managers actually measured on those? Because some of them are very robust and some of them are pretty weak. And I was just wondering if we go to the trouble to list them, then we should use them.
True.
Or let's come up with some other approach.
I'm having a little bit of deja vu because I think we might have talked about
We
that
did.
last year as well.
Yeah, and I think for natural resources, I think really changed theirs a lot from this last year.
Yeah, and we do review them from time to time to make sure that they remain relevant.
Yeah.
And yeah, some of them are stronger than others. It's also easier to have metrics based on number of widgets than it is on
Right.
sometimes, I mean, like real property, number of acquisitions. That's hard to forecast, right? Because you don't know exactly what's going to come available.
Right.
For example, whereas numbers of miles of trails brushed, I mean, that's a lot more predictable.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, but we are, at least in my business line, kicking off a little bit of a review of ours and to kind of see if we can use it as a model. Also to help other departments to see what we can do. It's not a high priority, to be honest, but we do look at them, some departments more than others, depending on how firm the metrics are, right? Like one of them that I'm looking at is for admin services and for finance is the number of electronic payments versus checks. I mean, we were understaffed, we rebuilt. So now we're going to take another look at that and say, okay, we need to increase it again because them is slowly tapering down from high 60s to low 60%.
Mhm.
I'd like to increase that because printing checks and mailing checks is expensive, waste of time, whereas you can send an electronic payment much cheaper.
Right.
For example.
Absolutely. Right.
Yeah, it all depends.
Okay, we're not going to solve it here. I still think we need some work. So we'll leave it at that.
I agree. Yeah.
Okay.
Oh.
All right. Susanna Chen, Assistant General Manager, and I will cover the Land Acquisition and Preservation Program for you. This program haven't changed a lot since we presented to you in March during the retreat. There's 11 projects under this program, 1 new project and 10 continuing projects. And the budget request is around $637,000. And again, I want to remind the committee members that land acquisition cost is not typically included in the budget, in the adopted budget, because at the time of budget adoptions, most of the acquisition are still speculative. So instead of adopting the budget, include that cost of acquisition in the budget, you normally to approve a budget adjustment when you approve the acquisitions. So the cost we ask here is mostly to cover the pre-acquisition costs, such as survey, some of the due diligence work. Here is the full list of the projects under this program for fiscal year 25. I just want to mention a few things. For the Johnston Ranch land acquisitions, this project has been going for some time, and the board actually approved the acquisition in 2021. The cost of escrow require a lot line adjustment to separate the farmland and the upland. We've been working on that. The county has approved the land division applications. We are in the final stage of providing information needed to our grant fund agencies. This project received 2 grants from 2 separate agencies. We are hoping that we have submitted all the information they need, and they should be able to release the grant fund shortly. So it is very possible that by the time the budget is before the full board for adoption, this project will come off the list because it will be able to close escrow within this fiscal year. Another project I wanted to just briefly mention is the Coverdale Ranch land acquisitions. This is a big project that we have been working on and will continue to work on in fiscal year 25. As you know, we closed escrow last year and acquired phase 1 and phase 2 of Coverdale Ranch. at the time of closed escrow, we enter into an option agreement with Post for additional 1,200 acres of Coverdale ranch land that are associated with the Lake Lucerne Water Company. We enter into the optional agreement to allow us more time to clarify the capital and maintenance responsibility with the water company shareholders. We have been making good progress on that. Right now, we're working on some high-level deal terms. We are hoping that we will be able to bring some options to the board for your consideration in 25 or 26. So we continue to work on that in fiscal year FY 25. And other projects, key projects that we will be working on, we have been working on, we'll continue to work on in FY 25 is the El Mirador Land Conservation Project. This property is located in the town of Patola Valley. Post is currently owning 50% of the property. Acquisition of this property require land divisions or lot line adjustments. We are working with Post to have a better understanding of the property right now. And we're hoping that we will go through that process in FY 25 and hopefully we can complete the acquisition in FY 26. So those are the projects I wanted to highlight and just wanted to show you a map of those projects that we will be working on in FY 25. And I will just pause here to see if you have any questions.
Questions? Nope, nope. I have a question. What about I think we've talked about it, but I don't remember what we said. What about the land on either side of the Highway 17 wildlife crossing? Is that, or how are we doing on that? And should that be on the list?
We are doing, we are making progress
Mhm.
on, actually the board will actually have some opportunity to hear information related to that. So there's two crossing options that we're considering in
Right.
south and north,
Yeah.
and both will require some property acquisitions to allow that crossing to be constructed.
Right.
And one of the crossing require us to work with the San Jose Water Company, and another crossing require us to work with the private property owners,
Right.
which is a little bit more challenging. I think we have some cooperation with the San Jose Water Companies, and that gives us some more advantage in terms of pursuing that alignment. So there will be our real property department is actively working with the project team to pursue those options, and the board will have some opportunity to hear additional information soon.
Okay. I was thinking that, so I'll ask it because you heard someone just did. I guess what are the, I was thinking that should be on the list, and I was just wondering what criteria. So it sounds like we're making progress on it. It just didn't make the cut. So I guess that's
Well,
okay, but
I think the work is associated with the project, so it's not making on this list, but our real property staff is supporting the Highway 17 crossing project staff
right.
on
Okay.
the options that they're pursuing. Yeah.
okay.
So, and the real property department's work plan is unique. The list does not fully represent the work that they
Right.
do on a day-to-day basis. Yeah.
Yeah, just to follow up on that, I thought you said either crossing would require acquisitions. Do you mean easements or
Yeah,
actually?
just property rights.
Oh,
Either, yeah,
Thank
yeah. Any other questions for me? All right.
I think we're good.
Okay.
Great. Thanks.
Good afternoon, Brian Malone, Assistant General Manager, Visitor and Field Services, and we'll get into natural resource protection and restoration. So first, just a general overview of all the number of projects, 8 new projects, 31 continuing multi-year projects, and then the breakdown between Fund 10, Fund 30, and Fund 40. And for a budget for new projects approaching 2 million, 1.7, and 800 million for the continuing projects. And then we're just going to really use the Big Rocks guide for looking at the particular projects, and then I'll have the whole project list if there's any projects that you have a particular interest to. We were already getting into the well, I'll start with the Highway 17 crossing because we were starting to talk about it. The crossing for wildlife has been chosen. The board selected the Trout Creek as the preferred alternative. That does require some property rights. It's more of don't develop right in that framework right there. Also issues with Valley Water is going to do a replacement of the spillway. So we have to make sure we negotiate how that would affect the eventual wildlife crossing. And they're aware of that as well. Really, the next big step is the CEQA review. As you know, we published the initial CEQA document, and it's CEQA and NEPA, national as well. And that's been circulating. So right now we've received comments and we're responding to them. Particularly, we've had conversations with Department of Fish and Wildlife on their comments of the alignment of the wildlife crossing, and particularly what will be coming to you shortly, talking about the trail alignment as well. So that project's in good shape. Definitely some big decisions to be made, definitely property rights, and the bulk of the work is ahead of us, but it's continuing apace, and we'll be doing a lot of work on the environmental evaluation over this next year in fiscal year 25. And I always love the juxtaposition of the two, right? We have this big wildlife crossing for mountain lions and deer and all sorts of big wildlife, as well as small ones can go along the creek corridor as well, of course. And then on the other side of the reservoir, we have the Alma Bridge wildlife passage, different kind of wildlife passage, much smaller, but as it turns out, not that much smaller of a project. The phase we're in there is we've developed the conceptual plans. It'll be up to that working group really led by Santa Clara County Parks and what they deem for the project and what works for their road to choose the alternatives that meet the wildlife goals of preserving the population. And then really going into design development and CEQA as well for that project in the next fiscal year. Any questions on these two projects?
So on the Alma Bridge Road project, there's a construction number in the FY27 slot, but it's a relatively small number compared to the numbers that we've seen for the project. So I was just wondering what assumptions are going into that, or is there another project where there's a bigger number, or are we making assumptions about what partners will put into that?
Yeah, so certainly the project is not fully funded. So when you're looking at projected dollar amounts for the mid-pen budget, that's what you're looking at. So we will definitely need funding with our partners, and we'll be looking for outside funding as well. So yes, the overall project number is going to be higher than that.
And is that FY27 part sort of the tip of a longer period, or is that really where it's targeted for construction?
So let me get to the right page. 60.
Page 60.
Do you have a exact answer? Is that, there's nothing in the future years, estimate, but.
Yeah, Kirk Lennington, Natural Resources Manager. So I believe your question was about kind of the timing on construction. Is that correct?
I mean, the initial question was there's a 750K number.
Yeah.
For construction in
Yeah.
FY '27. So the first part of the question was sort of, and I think Brian answered.
Yeah.
You know, yeah, we're planning on, or we're counting on other people as well. But then I guess the other part of the question is that sort of the tip of a.
That's the beginning.
Yeah.
Yeah, for the construction. It's they're depending on what kind of funding we and the partners are able to bring in for the project. They could just construct one component of it, or they could bolt on the additional components as funding is available, or maybe they'll get, we'll be able to get the full funding amount to do the full 5 miles. But it's a very large project, and so it's going to take a number of years to construct.
Okay, great. Thank you. Brendan.
Yeah.
All right. So and the other one we wanted to identify here is some of our wildland fire projects that are on the big rocks. So the first one, the wildland fire capacity, is really looking at the Alpine Road corridor and using grant funding to do work similar to work you've seen along Skyline Boulevard, both district work and the San Mateo Fire Safe, and then also work that was again joint work on Pageville going down the other side of Skyline, that South Skyline Fire Safe, District Crews, and Santa Clara County Fire Safe work they did on Pageville there, as well as the regular routine road brushing. And then the great news about the Los Gatos Creek Watershed Project, we had the first phase of funding. And then now this is the second phase of funding for that project to continue the work, expanding some of the project areas into areas in Sierra Azul. And then expanding partnerships too, with a couple of different partners that joined the Watershed Collaborative, along with already the partners of Santa Clara County Parks and San Jose Water, working together to do all these different projects. And we've completed a massive amount of work in Bear Creek, but then all that partnership with San Jose Water, which is of course adjacent, Santa Clara County Parks, they're doing a lot of work in Sanborn, and then us in Sierra Azul all ties together. And that's why we call it the Watershed Collaborative, to do all this fuels work. So great that we are lined up to get that we have additional funding lined up and continuing that work. So as was mentioned, it's these fire projects that have the grant funding that are, our highest priority for the big rocks, to make sure that we take advantage of that. Question?
Brian, along the same lines, I think we like to talk about all the new acreage that we have made more fire resilient, but it's the acreage that we already did some work on 5 years ago, 3 years ago, that we need to now go back. And so in a way, our budget is just going to kind of keep increasing and increasing.
Yeah,
So
and certainly we hope to take these big bite projects with grant funding and then come behind with the maintenance of it. And that's why you've seen the development of our two resource management crews in both areas, so that we can work on keeping that going. But I will mention that even while this phase 2 is getting started, we are continuing, you'll see in the budget book for another year or so, the phase 1, and the big area, probably the biggest area in Bear Creek that was treated, was the old vineyard area that was just all overgrown brush. And that's a multi-year project to get it restored back to a kind of oak woodland type habitat. So we will be doing re-entry. The biggest thing is for invasive weeds. Anytime you do any type of fuel management, you always have to go back and look for what invasive weeds are coming in. So we have all of them tracked. And for the Los Gatos Creek Watershed in particular, we have re-entry periods for those project sites.
right. But in a way, we're going to have to, it's been great to get all these grants, but grants dollars go away. So we're gonna, in the future, gonna have to budget more and more of our own dollars to actually go back and do that kind of work, right?
Correct,
Or do you
right.
see
So, and
grants
then our
continue?
priority would be to have staffing and funding to maintain what we're putting in now,
Right,
which is
yeah.
all, for the general wild program, it's all these identified priority 1 and 2 sites that we've
Yep.
gone through the wildland fire resiliency program.
Right.
Review, gotten input from fire agencies, and then these big grant funded projects to have those on a return interval. So that's the base level, but we would see a slowdown probably in major new projects if we're not able to receive outside
Oh, I
grant
see.
funding.
I see what you're saying. Okay.
And it's probably would, it still seems to be on the top end of the priority for the state, but given the budget focus that they have, it's not one of the projects that is just automatic tied funding. So clearly, you're probably going to see cuts in those programs, given the state budget.
Right. Okay. Thank you. Question?
This is maybe a dicey question, but at times there's a property transfer from Post to Midpen. Is there any way to, that's fair, to navigate transfers so that if there are any wildfire resiliency projects that need to be done, that they're taken care of while Post is in possession, as opposed to coming to Midpen, if you will, as a liability, although a wonderful asset as well? Is that just kind of a stinky question to ask?
I mean, I'll take a shot at it. So one, the basic framework of looking at a property and seeing what improvements are needed on that property, we definitely do when Post has ownership. It's one of the advantages of our partnership with Peninsula Open Space Trust. So quite frequently, infrastructure projects we'll take a look at, and if it makes sense for Post to complete that work. Now, typically that cost would then be an improvement that's included in the cost of the property to the open space district. But that really does make sense to look at that. Fuel management, there certainly has been work in that regard. I would go to Cloverdale. They had a burn program that they were working with CAL FIRE to do there. So I think they left that like the front side of that property in much better shape than it would have been. So that definitely happens. And that's part of Post's land management. We haven't collaborated on a specific property to say, hey, it would be really great to get this fuel management work done in the same sort of way we've done with fencing or house improvements, like we did that Lubitas farmhouse, posted the work before our ownership. So that's something to think about. It does really fall into district staff's expertise, both with our natural resource department and in with our land and facilities department to implement these types of projects. So it's not something that we would necessarily have to get done prior. And sometimes you'd want to go through, the preserve planning process before taking on a big project like that. But certainly, particularly if it was a geographically confined project, like maybe something like a project we did a few years back on Page Mill, just on district land, was remove a grove of eucalyptus trees. I could see that being a option to work with Post if we were acquiring a property that had, something of that magnitude.
Well, thank you. I know there are several considerations when we do interact with our partners, but I don't think I'd heard that this one was one of them. So thank you.
Yeah, no, that's not typically one. So that's one thing we can think about, whether those type of projects need to be completed prior to purchase. All right. Okay, so you'll notice when you look at the big rocks that there are some of these ag projects on there. So that's why we're spotlighting them today. The Lone Madrone corrals, a corral, really a place for offloading your cattle, gathering them up, treating them, whether it's, putting ear tags on them or doing a check. A corral is essential. It's an essential piece of equipment. We've generally inherited really old, degraded infrastructure. So here we'll be going in and putting in a new corral system. And what we've been doing too is we're buying corral systems that are movable. So you have the panels that if in the future we need to change that location, we'll be able to use that same material.
Question, Brian. So
Yeah.
Lone Madrone is basically Red Barn.
Yes. Yeah.
So, because those corrals are a mess in there, and I
Yeah.
know we kind of have said hands off. Is that where you're talking about cleaning that up? And
Yeah, so I'd have to double check with staff, but that's where our initial plans were to have the corrals near the Red Barn area. Is that correct? Maybe just a thumbs up that I can relay?
Some environment considerations there because of past practices.
So the land facilities manager is saying there's some environmental considerations, but they would be cited in the Red Barn area.
okay, all right. Thank you.
All right, so the other ones, they're all fencing projects. We talked about this before, the ag projects, compared to some of the big dollar projects like crossing Highway 17 are, more in the $100,000 range. And that's where you'll see a lot of these fencing projects, but really important, both for the grazing operation and then for meeting our natural resource goals. Particularly cross fencing helps you distribute the grazing pressure. So you can have a property that, and actually the former Driscoll ranches were like this when we took ownership of the grazing lease, where some were just really overgrazed and then some weren't grazed at all. So we want to even out that grazing pressure to reduce any impacts from overgrazing, and then to have that positive pressure of eating the grass that helps maintain grasslands. Otherwise, as you know, on the coast, it'll just get overgrown with brush. So two cross fencing projects. And then the Big Dipper, I did highlight this at the retreat, but I'll just touch on it briefly. My first reaction when I saw this project was like, oh, why are we doing this? This was our first grazing property. We did perimeter fencing on the whole thing. But this is that intersection that I talked about at the retreat. And I just mentioned the Alpine Road fuel clearance. Quite often, just for efficiency, you depend on vegetation barriers for your fencing extents, whether it's a perimeter fence or an interior fence. And sometimes it's kind of like an experiment, and there's been cattle on there before. Let's put them on there, and if we get a complaint from the neighbor, we might have to look at a fence. Like on Big Dipper, we ended up getting complaints from cattle ending up going down into the Portola Heights neighborhood from Big Dipper. So this one, we're going to be doing enough vegetation management along Alpine Road. It's going to open up some gaps in that exterior fencing so that we have to, repair the existing fence and then tie into it with new sections of fence. Mm-hmm. But any questions on some of our ag improvements?
Just a quick question, Brian. So this is expensive stuff. We run a lot of fence. It's $1 million. I mean, if you start adding all of this stuff up. So I'm assuming we do this in conjunction with the grazer, as far as just because an old fence was there doesn't mean we replace it with a new fence. We really think about.
Correct. So, and that's one of the balance points where all the leases now have a breakdown of the responsibilities at the back end and attachment of the lease, really. Right. And the rancher is responsible, the lessee, for maintaining the existing fence. Right. And that, that can be pretty rundown fence that's still effective. Right. And they need to go out when a tree falls on that and breaks it and repair it. If it's so totally gone that we get to this point of a capital project, then the district is taking on that expense as a new improvement that the district will own. And, the grazing rancher, they have a lease of a limited term. We're going to longer 15-year terms. But when they leave or are off the property, the district will keep that infrastructure, obviously, because it's installed on the land. Right. So in the case of the new fencing, the district is paying for it. But the grazing tenant has a responsibility to maintain that new fence and the older existing fence.
Right. Okay. sorry, we were going to move on, but
Yeah.
my question was slightly different.
Okay, sorry.
Just because there's old fence, doesn't mean necessarily that's the right place for a new fence to go.
Oh, yeah,
So, we
absolutely.
do this
Particularly if we're
in-
doing a lot of clearing, it'll be more straightforward, where we're aligning the fence.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Thanks.
Yeah. But that is, you're looking at minimizing costs and keeping as much grass inside the fence.
Yeah.
That's how you're designing it.
Yeah.
All right, here's the big list. There's a second page on this, so we can take a look at this list, see if there's any questions, and then move on to the second page.
No, any questions on this list? Not seeing any.
All right, so here we go to the second page. I'll just point out that we were talking earlier about that phase 3 purchase. These Cloverdale Reservoir monitoring improvements are really playing into seeing how the water moves through the system that will help us in those negotiations.
Question?
Not a question, but I think maybe sometime last year when we discussed this, I think there were a number of board members were interested in a possible visit to some of the fisheries and creek projects.
Yeah, so that's still on our schedule. I don't know the current status of setting up that field trip, but we were talking about the White Barn and then also hitting some of these. I know we wanted to wait till the end of the rainy season, so we're in the right moment now. I'll just check in. Do we have anything in the scheduling plans?
Have to check with District Clerk Maria Soria. I know you were looking at the scheduling for those tours.
Yes, this is Maria Soria, District Clerk. We're looking into September. We're just confirming to make sure that the staff that we need, and I can't remember who the other people are. We're confirming schedules, but it will be in late September, mid-September.
It was a little bit hard to follow, but I did catch, we're looking at mid-September for those field tours.
Correct. Yes, thank you.
So it's on our list probably further out than you anticipated.
No, that's fine. I just wanted to make sure it was there. So
Yeah, no, it's really great, particularly these big woody debris projects or these big tree trunks. You really can see after it's been installed for a while how it affects the stream channel and creates these nice pools. You know, you could see how it's changing the way the stream looks. Matter of fact, this last and part of that is because we stopped blading the road through it, but I had to go check out the apple orchard house. And even though it was well past our heaviest rains, I was like well above my knee wading across the creek where that used to be a drivable road across there. Now there are these nice deep pools.
The other question I had was just on the San Francisco garter snake project. Do you have any more specifics on what would be done in FY25?
Yeah, so we'll be looking at the permits needed to collect from the population that would be, you know, we would use for breeding stock, so to speak. And it's looking like that'll be the Cloverdale population. And then so to go through the permitting that we would need, that then they would go to the San Francisco Zoo, and then they would breed them and then have animals for re-release. You know, the most exciting for the open space district, of course, is the possibility of reintroduction. This would be years down the road, but reintroduction into La Honda Open Space Preserve, into that conservation management unit that has a lot of ponds above the Harrington Creek Trail.
Thank you.
Karen, any questions? No? I do have a question. Actually, the last line, the supporting project, strategic plan for adaptation and resilience to climate change. I don't know, any more detail on that? Or
Yeah, I think for that, I'll just call Kirk up to go over that.
He was expecting, I guess, that. So
Waiting in the wings.
Yeah. Kirk Lanington, Natural Resources Manager. So yeah, that project, there's a number of different projects that we used to have called out. So there's projects to look at increasing carbon sequestration in soils. We're also working in forest habitats, looking at increasing sequestration there. And then also there's projects looking at residences to improve energy efficiency. The vehicle fleet, looking at ways to improve the efficiency of that. So there's a number of different projects that all kind of get wrapped into this kind of complicated worded catch-all for what we're doing with the climate program. And it looks like, I haven't looked at that page, but there is a breakout of individual projects in that section. Okay. Okay, thanks. Yeah, Director Holman.
I have a broad question, relates to both this and it relates to a question I asked earlier, sort of about offsets. But if we're going to do burns, we're obviously going to pollute the air. How is that addressed? I can refresh my memory on how we address that in terms of climate.
So I guess, the big picture justification for why would you burn
Right.
when you're releasing carbon into the atmosphere is that by doing that, one, there is carbon that's then available for recapture to go back into the soils and get utilized and get incorporated into the soil. But there is carbon also just going up into the atmosphere. So why would you do that? And the concept is that you prevent larger scale.
I understand the
Oh,
concept. How
yeah.
do we account for what goes into the atmosphere? How do we capture the impact of that? Or
So do we measure or try to anticipate in a prescribed fire how much carbon will be released? Is that the question?
yeah,
I actually don't know the answer to that question. Do you know if we're looking at that for the prescribed fire?
We have on a couple projects done some calculations. It's part of a lot of the burn plans for a prescribed fire is to do that calculation. And then you compare it. It's the avoided emissions are where it's actually a little dicier just in terms of the boundaries you draw around that fire resiliency that you're adding into the system by doing a prescribed fire treatment. What kind of avoided emissions are you then creating with that fire treatment? So it's a bit of a dance, I would say, more than a science in terms of how you are. The calculation is straightforward, but the justification for the area of impact of your project versus the overall effect of that treatment project. But we're not doing in-depth calculations for all of our fire areas that we're doing the prescribed fire, but it's more at a general level. We're not getting into a very detailed calculation, but it is part of what you do for your prescribed fire burn plan.
Yeah, that's helpful. It's one of those things that you're doing a good and you're causing a bad. The overall picture is good and positive, but there is still this I started to say localized, but it's not localized because air travels. And how do we account for that? So I guess it's not a science, as you say.
And there's the reason for doing prescribed fire extends well beyond just a fire protection treatment. You're doing a lot of habitat restoration, species treatment. So it's a natural ecological process here in California that we're trying to reintroduce into a more, I guess, safe, normal kind of ecological process again. But we're battling, close to 150 years of fire prevention, so suppression.
If we'd only followed the tribal example sooner.
Yeah.
All right, and then we're on to board questions, public comments, and comments in our direction. And this is the break point before the public access that board discretion, but given our stop time of 3:30, probably doesn't make sense to start into.
So is it all right that we stop here? But that probably means we'll use most of our time next time too, which is.
Yeah, but that's
okay.
typically what we get to in the first meeting is
Right.
2 program areas and then cover the other 2 when
Right,
we come,
right.
come back together.
Okay, good. So just any other comments or questions from the committee before we break?
I don't want to start a big discussion, but I was wondering if I could just tee up one concern I have for that next discussion, just so people can think about it. And it's that we seem to have a lot of stuff piled up in FY27. And, you know, particularly looking at the trail projects, if we actually did what's in there, and I would love to do that, it would be a lot more than we've done in any year, I think, ever. And certainly a lot more than we've been doing recently. So I think it would be good to have a discussion about that. And, you know, is it realistic? And if we think we can do that, how are we going to prepare? And, you know, how are you going to make sure that we are able to do it?
Yeah, no, and actually, I actually noticed the same thing, not specifically to trails, but a lot of 27 construction going through the document. And that is kind of a cycle, right? Where we're more in planning and CEQA analysis. And then we will, 27 does seem like a heavy year. Of course, some of that probably won't progress all the way. But because a lot of it could be contracted, that was our initial discussion, that we could still handle that being a heavier construction year. But definitely the point of, we'll take a look at the trail construction that would need to be done in-house to confirm that we're looking good. Because we do plot all that out as well on the cruise schedule. So good preparation for next meeting.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, anything else? Only other thing is it would be great if we could get a copy of the slides, and I guess, oh, yes? Oh, great, because just, I guess that I'd invite the committee to go back through what we've seen today, and maybe if we could start the next committee with any questions from today's presentation, just to make sure we follow up on that before we dive in. So I guess that's kind of a homework assignment.
Sounds good.
Okay, great. With that, thank you very much. Great, as usual. Thank you so much to staff. This is really good stuff, and I think we had a good discussion today. So thank you. We're adjourned.
And Chair Riffle, there are no public comments currently for this topic.
Thank you. All right. Thanks, everybody. That's right. Yeah.
It's a heavy mid-pen month.
Yeah. Karen, speaking of which, do you care which